And welcome to Middlesex Moments. My name is Don Deccessare, so I am not Dr. Anna Wasescha, president of Middlesex College, who is normally the host of this program. I am privileged and honored to be asked to fill in for Dr. Anna Wasescha at the Middlesex Community College, and we're going to tell you some very interesting things about what's going on at the college. And I have a very special guest today on Middlesex Moments, and that guest is Dr. Anna Wasescha, president of Middlesex Community College. What happened, Doctor, is your staff, sneaky devils that they are, sent me an email asking me if I would come over on this day that we are visiting together and interview you because they wanted to turn the tables. You're always doing the interviewing and you're talking to all the wonderful people of the college and finding out very interesting things about what's going on. And they thought you might actually be an interesting person to hear from.
Oh dear.
And so here I am to hear from you. And we're at the college. As I say, we're in the president's office, which is a lovely room, not too grand.
No, but I like the color, don't you?
I do. What would we call it?
Green.
I was going to call it green, but it's not just green. It's like a lime green. What would you say?
It's the color of leaves in spring, I think.
Well, it's spring,
Yeah.
so that's appropriate.
They're just starting to green up. Yeah. When I arrived here, it was the color masking tape, which I always think
I
is
remember that, yes. Your predecessor, who was a great guy,
Right.
but he was sort of like into bland.
Yeah, right. Relocation beige. Yeah.
So this is more you? You
Yes,
chose it?
yes.
This is more reflective of your
Absolutely.
personality,
Yeah.
and actually you're wearing a scarf that has a little green in it here and there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very pro-color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it occurs to me that you're here nearly a year now.
About 9 months, sort of a nice gestation period.
Right.
Ready to be born.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in that period of time, what was your biggest surprise having arrived here from Minnesota?
Well, I think I had a really good sense coming into it that the faculty was a very strong group of individuals, and that Jonathan Dowby, the interim president, had created a wonderful platform because he had worked all year on the strategic plan. So that was all set. I wish I could have met more students across the last 9 months, and I do what I can to try to get in touch with them. What's the biggest surprise? That's a hard question to answer. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I could have a superlative.
I'm going to give you a moment to reflect.
Thank you.
Is what I'm going to do, because it's time for us to take a break.
Okay.
Here on Middlesex Moments. My name is Don Deccessare, filling in inadequately, but filling in for President of the college, Anna Wasescha, who is today our guest. So we will go off for a little break here, and then we'll be back shortly to continue our conversation. And here we are back on Middlesex Moments. Again, my name is Don Deccessare, occasional host here on WLIS and WMRD, filling in for Dr. Anna Wasescha on Middlesex Moments because her staff decided to turn the tables on her, and she's the guest today. So I'm asking her questions. And we went off to the break with a question hanging, Doctor. And the question was, what was your biggest surprise having come to Connecticut from Minnesota and taking over this college?
Well, and I do have a response, which is kind of interesting. Coming here, I had known about Connecticut because of the important high-profile independent colleges that one associates with the state, starting with Yale, of course, and then Wesleyan, which is just on the other side of the river and in Middletown. So one of my biggest surprises was that the number of students at Wesleyan, which is roughly 3,000, is about the same number of students at Middlesex Community College. So that's surprising to me because the high-profile independent schools are known to so many people, and I think the town is identified with Wesleyan. But actually, Middlesex is just about as big, and I'm looking forward to a day when we really think of this as a college town that has a university and a college, one on either bank of the river, in a way, up on the hills. And collectively, this community is much more vital and amazing and powerful and able to do good things in the economy and socially because of the college's presence here.
Your reply prompts a question. I hadn't thought about it, as you just described it, that the two schools, the two institutions are roughly the same size in number of students. I don't know about the acreage, but you certainly don't have the number of buildings, the number of facilities, et cetera, that they have. They're an older school than you. I'm not trying to make invidious comparisons, but I am wondering about this. Why do you think the community doesn't really identify so much with Middlesex Community College? It's here. I'm sure virtually everybody in the community knows that it's here. It actually serves a wide geographical area of the state of Connecticut, all of Middlesex County. It even has satellite campuses, does Middlesex College. Yet I think you're right that if we went downtown and said, okay, which town, which college is in Middletown, they would say Wesleyan.
Right.
Why
Right.
is that?
Well, Wesleyan has a well-deserved reputation for very famous scholars and politicians, Woodrow Wilson being one of them, William Manchester, of course, the writer. And American higher education is so wonderful because it's so varied. And the choices that a student is presented with when they're thinking about a college are so broad that there's a pretty good chance that students actually can find the college that would be the best fit for them, which is the same story as finding the best job. It has to fit for the individual as well as the organization. So one of the things about Wesleyan is it has national standing, and so people know about it all across the country and surely all around the world as well. Whereas the difference with a community college is that it's very local. Most of the students who attend this college live in this community and will stay in this community. By the numbers, community college graduates tend to stay very close to this area where they have gone to college. And this is not true with the National University. You don't think that a student who comes to Yale or to Wesleyan is going to stay. They could go anywhere, literally. And our students can go anywhere as well. But by the numbers, they tend to stay here. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably why people identify the community with Wesleyan.
Well, is there any difference with respect to the aspirations of students who, let's take a freshman here and a freshman there, starting out, day one of class. Mm-hmm. Don't they have pretty much the same aspirations for themselves?
There's this wonderful group, it's the Bonner Foundation, Bonner, and they've done a lot of work on how students become full-fledged, whole human beings and engaged citizens and productive workers and positive family members, and all of the above. Any kind of social science paradigm, you have to have a model, right?
Yeah.
And the very beginning stage of that model is expectations. And I think that my own experience, and I've worked in private liberal arts college as well, the expectations that are placed upon individuals at highly selective schools are that they will rise to positions of power and influence in their community, whether that community is a local community or a global community. I think that students who come to community colleges have the same array of aspirations that anyone has, but sometimes concerned that the expectations might be somewhat more modest. I have this wonderful friend in Minnesota who just wrote something to me in an email, and it struck me as so powerful. It was Boswell and I think Samuel Johnson. They were in a skull, and what is a sculler, the boat, the long boat
yeah.
that you see on the Connecticut River here. And there was a boatman who was doing the rowing, and they were talking about what is the purpose of education. Why, and the idea, that education is really for the rich and well-born, and so one of them said to the rower, "What would you give to know of the Argonauts?" And the rower responded, "I would give everything I have." And the conclusion was that it is natural and instinctive for humans to want to have knowledge in order to order their world and to make the best of what they see. I think that's a wonderful way of thinking about all students, including the students who come to a community college.
I think that's a superb way of describing it, and I think ultimately they do have the same.
Yes. Right.
I chose the word aspirations carefully. Mm-hmm. And you're part of a revolution in a way in American education, because community colleges have taken on a higher level of impact than they had 20 years ago, let's say. And what you and the other presidents in the Connecticut system, and for that matter, all around the country, are doing is now looked at in some ways differently. You have, I think, a harder job, and I say this with all due respect to the president of Wesleyan University, than he has with regard to basic education, because you have the necessity to educate, and you also have the necessity to remediate.
Right. Right.
More students who come here are thought, and I know we can debate the issue, but are thought to need some remedial work in basic skills, math and English, than probably at Wesleyan are thought to have the need for remediation. So that gives you another burden,
Right.
and it's become one that is now getting public attention. Is it a good idea that we have to worry about that? Should we just throw them in, sink or swim? If they can't do the work, then that's their problem. Where are you with this?
Well, it's true that we offer what we call developmental education. And I asked the question, how much of what we offer is developmental here at Middlesex, and it's 15%. So what we're doing is offering post-secondary education in a way, but not college education. Those students who take those developmental courses take them at a college, but they do not count toward a college degree. Mm-hmm. So that's the distinction. I think that community colleges are one of the most interesting, revolutionary ideas in higher education because we really are a college for everyone, not just for the select few. And when we have that as our mission, then part of our mission is to get people ready to do college work. And I think unless there were another institution in our society that was doing that, and we typically think that high schools would be doing that work, but for 1,000 reasons, not just one or two, there's no simple solution to this, but for 1,000 reasons, there are many students who leave high school with a diploma in hand who are not ready to embark upon a college education and go directly into college level work. So that, that's an issue.
But a certain amount of your budget obviously has to be devoted to that.
Right.
Certainly a certain amount of the attention of various members of the faculty are devoted to that, as well as the students themselves. And you mentioned that they are preparing themselves in effect to do college work by being within the campus. But in some ways, it's hard for them because they are also having to do that while not moving forward in their own minds into the college program that they want to follow. And I'm sure this creates, I don't want to use the word tension, but it creates difficulty for advisors, people like that, to try to explain to a student why they need to do this first before they can do that.
Right, right. This is such a huge subject. For example, it's very hard on somebody's ego to have come through high school earning A's and B's in English and then discover that when they get to college they actually have to take a remedial course in English in order to get ready for college level work. That's tough. And there's a certain stigma that some people feel that is attached to taking those courses. But it's all across the map. Other people, as I said, community colleges are for everyone. So for those individuals who've been out of college or out of high school for a while and come to college, they think, I got to brush up on my math because I can't possibly take a statistics course until I remember how you do these various equations. And there's nothing dishonorable about that. I think we have to work to detach the issue of societal standing and stigma and things like that and say, as a practical matter, is it a good in our society to have as many people as possible graduate from college, at least at the AA level, at the 2-year level or further? And I would say, yes, it's not only good, it's an imperative. And what's it going to take to get there? And let's not worry too much about the rest of the trappings.
I'm Don Deccessare, substitute host here on Middlesex Moments. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from the office of the president of Middlesex Community College. And we're taking a break, and we'll be back very shortly. We're back from the break. This is Middlesex Moments. My name is Don Deccessare, guest host here today, and my privilege to be so, sitting in the office of the president of Middlesex Community College, Dr. Anna Wasescha, and her staff turned the tables on her today, and she is the guest. We were talking just before, Doctor, about sort of community college life in general, and obviously specifically about Middlesex Community College, and you now having been here almost a year. I was thinking about the population. You were saying you wanted to get to know them a little bit better, and you've been meeting some of the students. Clearly at a community college, and this one in particular, one sees a great range of all kinds of different students in terms of ethnicity, but what's striking me now particularly is the age, that we see a wider range of ages in your population than we would at a lot of other colleges. And I wonder what that adds to the atmosphere to have sitting in the same room a mother of 4 who's 47 years old and a person who's 18. And how does that work to create the atmosphere?
Well, I think the thing that always strikes me is that the richness of people's experiences are what give kind of flesh substance to the theories that we tend to focus on in education in general. And I will say the faculty also find it's very rewarding to be able to work with students who have a lot of life experience. But I also think that it works student to student, and that is maybe the most wonderful kind of electricity that can happen in a classroom, where you have a student who's, let's say, in their 40s. My favorite example, which is from my college in Minnesota, was our 11-year-old student who had come out of homeschool and was deemed to have finished high school at the age of 11, and so was a first-year student at my college. And we had a person who had been in Iraq, had actually also been the police sergeant in a local town. He had a couple of children older than this young boy, and they were in a beginning chemistry class together. Mm-hmm. And the 11-year-old was always chastising the 40-year-old for drinking too much coffee because, it's not good for you.
Right.
And the 40-year-old was really shepherding this young person, not even a teen, through college. And that's really just the most beautiful kind of example of how you get this dynamic going when you mix up the ages. We come through school, and homeschools are rocking that boat, but we come through school really locked into age, and your age is what puts you in the class rather than your level of development. And especially in the sciences, and this young man went on to the University of Minnesota Morris and was in the sciences. Age has virtually nothing to do with your ability to grasp concepts and make progress in the sciences in particular. Unless you're a humanities person. In the humanities, I think you need more experience. The best historians are older historians who have a lot to look back on. But the scientists are the ones who make their discoveries very early on. So anyway, there's uneven development, as Trotsky and others would talk about. Mm-hmm. And one of the great things about community colleges, I'll come back to it, we embrace it all. So you don't have to be a certain age to be taking the very first semester of French, where you're just doing I am, you are, he is in French. Or somebody who's, got a ton of experience. I always laugh when I say this, but the quote, real world, because everywhere we are is the real world, and is able to interpret things that they read in a history class really through having lived it firsthand maybe 30 years ago.
To me, one more thought on the age issue. Education with a big E, and then there's education with a small e. The big E is happening in front of the room, generally. There's a professor, an instructor, someone up in the front who is responsible for the curriculum of that class. Then there's the small e that's going on in the room. And, I went to a college which is a more traditional college where everybody was basically the same age in the class, maybe a year or two difference, but they were essentially the same age. But here you have a dynamic that didn't exist in that type of school, where I think, and your example is pertinent, two people sitting next to each other could be different in age by 20 years, easily. Mm-hmm. And at some point during the course of the course, they're going to interact, and that's education with a small e.
Right. And actually, there isn't a school in this country that wouldn't say that what they want to produce, one of their desired outcomes, is lifelong learners, right?
Right.
And so, we pedal to the metal on that, right? Because, we have people who are at various stages in their adulthood who are learning. In our case, formally, mm-hmm. but, have got the habits of mind and the value system that has directed them back into an educational institution because they want to, have some organized learning that can be understood and validated so that it has some currency in the world.
Suppose somebody out there is thinking to themselves, I always wanted to read Shakespeare, or I always wanted to learn more about art. I feel there's something missing in me that I don't know enough about that, and I want to. They may not want to get a degree of any kind, may not even want to get an associate's degree, but they're still interested enough that they want a structure that they can participate in. It would seem to me this is a perfect sort of place for that, isn't it? I mean, can they come anyway?
Absolutely, yeah, and it is. And I've had this wonderful experience of meeting with former faculty and staff from this college, and we're coming up to our 50th anniversary in 2016, which is really not very far into the future. And one of the wonderful things about a 50-year anniversary is that people who were here at the very, very beginning are still alive. Mm-hmm. You can hear from them how this college was founded, how it got started. But one of them, who was here last week, did teach Shakespeare. And Other former faculty were so happy to see him, and one of them told me the story about how an adult who you're a perfect example, that wanted to learn more about Shakespeare, came here and took that class and said it not only changed his life, but he endowed a scholarship in honor of this professor because he had opened up the world of Shakespeare to him. Yeah, that happened.
And even without thinking, we have a tendency, I think, especially with respect to education, to think in degrees of degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I got this one, now I'm going to get that one, then I'll get the other one, and so on. And back to the boatman with Dr. Johnson, he wasn't interested in a degree. He was interested in learning about mythical boatmen.
Right.
So if I just want to know more about art, because I feel that's important to me as a person, and I want to be able to have some context when I go to a museum, for example, I don't need a degree for that, but I might need a little structure to my learning.
This is another revolution I think we're just at the very beginnings of here in this country, because we have this paradigm in our mind that there are 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges, and then graduate school. Graduate school is just a big compendium of everything from medical school to degrees in higher education. That 2 and 4 year idea it's first of all, it's actually not happening. Most people take 3 or 4 years to finish a 2-year degree and 5 or 6 years to finish a 4-year degree. And what that means is they're going through at a pace that works with the rest of their lives. Now, it also means that we don't any longer have a society where the great majority of people can suspend their living enough so that they can focus entirely on being in school. But I don't think that actually suggests that the learning that they have, which is now interspersed with other things like taking their children to soccer games and working the night shift, I don't think it runs down or diminishes the learning. It's simply different. It's adjusting. It's evolving. And I think that's a good thing. And so I would go from the old, it's no longer 2 and 4, it's interspersed with your life, to how wonderful and glorious is it that you could be doing this for the rest of your life. You could be coming back to be with a teacher, where you still need a teacher. There are places where you don't need a teacher any longer. And that's a nice stopping off point, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of places where you still need a teacher. And you can do that at a community college.
So as you come to the point, I should tell the folks listening out there that within a couple of weeks now, we're going to have the official ceremony. Investing you, I think, is the term, right? We're investing you as president of the college, which is a little odd, but I guess they wanted to be sure you were not going to run off. So we're going to have that coming up. So you have to do a speech, right?
Right, I do.
And have you started working on that?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so somewhere in that speech there's a theme. Mm-hmm. So you want to tell me what the theme is?
I think that the things that I've been mulling over have to do with 1947. The Truman Commission.
It was an excellent year.
Yes, it was a wonderful year. And so what happened in 1947, among other things, with the Truman Commission report, was the birth of the community college movement in this country. And what we saw through the 50s and 60s, and you and I probably lived those firsthand, was this tremendous burst in our knowledge base as a country, the expansion of our economy, and the idea that we could dream. We couldn't even imagine how big we could dream. It was so huge. And, for example, the idea of putting a man on the moon, which they actually did in a shorter period of time than they had estimated it would take. And I think that same kind of expansionist big idea feeling that was born in 1947 needs to be rediscovered now, because we're in a very different world than we were then. So we have to take stock of the terrain and the landscape, read all the signals that are coming in from the atmosphere, and figure out how to dream really big again. So I'm incredibly happy to have lived this long and to be able to be part of that. And so I think, I'll be talking about something like that.
Well, I hope the folks listening to us will take the trouble to read it. It'll be published, I'm sure, after you've delivered it on the website. So
it's not every day that I get to be interviewed by Don Deccessare and have the tables turned on me. I think I'm going to have him back again as a visiting host. In the meanwhile, I thought I'd say to the listeners in our audience today that if you want to learn more about Middlesex Community College, and I certainly hope you do, that you'll visit our website at mxcc.edu.
Doctor, thank you so much for being a guest on your own show.
Thank you for being a host.
Thank you so much for letting me do that. And thanks to everybody out there listening. And of course, Dr. Wasescha, we'll see you again next time on Middlesex Moments. Bye-bye now.